The air in my in-laws' living room was thick enough to choke on. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, slammed her palm down on the polished mahogany coffee table, rattling the porcelain teacups she'd set out for this ambush. "How dare you accuse our Amelia of something so vile?" she hissed, her face a mask of pure indignation. Beside her, my wife Amelia sniffled, dabbing at her perfectly dry eyes with a tissue. She was playing the part of the wounded dove, a role she had perfected over a lifetime of being her parents' little princess. My father-in-law, Robert, stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, his expression a mixture of disappointment and disgust. All of it directed at me. They had summoned me here to reprimand me, to put me back in my place for having the audacity to question their daughter. They thought I was there to apologize and beg for forgiveness. They had no idea I was about to hand them the invoice for her betrayal. You're probably wondering why a man would choose to detonate his marriage in his in-laws' living room, with his wife sitting right there. To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning, to the lie our entire relationship was built on, a lie so foundational that uncovering it meant razing everything to the ground. It all started not with a bang, but with a piggy bank. Our daughter, Lily, was 5 years old, and we'd bought her a small ceramic pig to teach her the value of saving. Every week I'd give her a small allowance, and we'd sit together as she proudly dropped the coins in. It was a ritual, a small moment of father-daughter bonding that I cherished. One evening I told Amelia we should open a proper savings account for her, for college, or a down payment on a house someday, something real. Amelia had smiled, her eyes lighting up in that way that always made me feel like the best husband in the world. "That's a wonderful idea, honey," she'd said, kissing my cheek. "Our little girl's future is the most important thing." So we opened the account, a joint account in both our names, but it was understood that this was Lily's money, sacred money. I set up an automatic transfer from my paycheck every month, a significant amount. I worked a lot of overtime, took on extra projects, all with the image of handing a grown-up Lily a statement one day and telling her, "This is for you. This is how much we believe in you." I imagined her tearful smile, her gratitude. It was a dream I nurtured for 6 years, a dream built on a foundation of sand. The truth was, the account was being drained almost as fast as I was filling it. And the person holding the shovel wasn't a stranger, it was the woman sleeping next to me every night. For 6 years, I lived in a state of blissful ignorance. You might wonder how a man could not notice his child's college fund being systematically emptied. The answer is simple. Trust. I trusted Amelia completely. When you love someone, you don't audit their every move. You don't demand proof of their character. You believe them. My own upbringing was modest. My parents taught me the value of $1 because we didn't have many of them. Hard work, honesty, and saving for a rainy day were the pillars of my world. Amelia's world was different. She was the golden child of Eleanor and Robert, a princess who never had a request denied. Her entire life she was told she was special, that she deserved beauty and luxury simply by virtue of being herself. This was in stark contrast to her younger brother, Leo. Leo was the scapegoat, the responsible one whose achievements were always minimized. I remember a family dinner shortly after we'd opened Lily's account. Amelia arrived wearing a new designer coat, and my in-laws spent 20 minutes fawning over it, praising her impeccable taste. Later, Leo quietly mentioned he'd received a major promotion at his engineering firm. His father grunted an acknowledgement and immediately turned back to Amelia to ask about her plans for redecorating her living room. Leo just looked down at his plate, a familiar shadow of resignation on his face. He was the one who worked, who saved, who sacrificed, but Amelia was the one who shone. Her parents had raised her to believe that she was entitled to a lifestyle, not that she had to earn one. Our finances were divided in a way that enabled her deception. I was the primary earner, so I managed the mortgage, the car payments, the utilities, and the long-term investments, including the automatic deposits into Lily's sacred account. Amelia handled the day-to-day expenses: groceries, clothes for Lily, household supplies. I gave her a generous budget from our main checking account. If she ever went over, she'd sigh and talk about how expensive everything was getting. I'd just work a little harder, pick up another freelance gig. I saw it as my duty as a husband and father. It never occurred to me that she was supplementing her lifestyle from another source. I thought her new handbags, her frequent spa days, and her designer shoes were clever finds from sales racks or gifts from her doting parents. I was a fool. The beginning of the end came on a quiet Tuesday evening. Lily, now 11, came home from school with a project about her future career. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She had it all mapped out, showing me brochures for universities with top veterinary programs. Seeing her so excited, so full of dreams, my heart swelled with pride. That night, after she went to bed, I decided to log into her savings account for the first time in a couple of years. I wanted to see how our nest egg was growing, to feel that tangible proof of my hard work paying off for her future. I pictured a healthy 6-figure balance. I typed in the username and password, my mind already celebrating. The page loaded, and I saw the number 4317. 4317. For a long moment, I just stared at the number on the screen. It didn't compute. My brain refused to process it. I must have typed the password wrong or logged into the wrong account. I logged out and back in. Same number. I refreshed the page once, twice, 10 times, as if clicking the mouse repeatedly could somehow will the correct balance into existence. The pixels remained stubbornly fixed, $43.17. A cold dread, heavy and metallic, began to creep up from my stomach. This had to be a mistake, a bank error, a system glitch. It was the only explanation that didn't shatter my world. I walked out of the study and found Amelia in the living room, scrolling through her phone, a picture of serene normalcy. My voice was tight, strained. "Amelia, there's something wrong with Lily's savings account. I just checked it. It's empty." I watched her face for a flicker of shock, of panic, of the same gut-wrenching horror I was feeling. Instead, her expression barely changed. She looked up from her screen, a little annoyed at being interrupted. "What do you mean, empty? That can't be right," she said, her tone casual, dismissive. "It's not right, Amelia. It says there's $43 in it. Where's the money? Did you move it? We need to call the bank." That's when she put on her patient, slightly condescending smile, the one she used when I was being silly or over-anxious. She patted the seat next to her. "Oh, honey, sit down. Don't panic. I was going to tell you." She took a breath, as if preparing to explain a complex topic to a simple child. "I moved it. A friend of mine whose husband is in finance told me about this incredible high-yield investment fund. Leaving it in a savings account was practically throwing money away with the low interest rates. I put it somewhere it can really grow for Lily. I was waiting for the first big return to surprise you." For a split second, relief washed over me so intensely it made me dizzy. Of course, an investment. That made sense. Amelia was being smart, proactive. I was an idiot for panicking. "An investment? Oh, okay. Wow, you should have told me. I almost had a heart attack." I let out a shaky laugh. "So, where is it? Which fund? I'd love to take a look at the portfolio." The smile on her face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Oh, it's very complicated. All stocks and bonds and things. It's not something you can just log into like a bank account. You know you're not good with all that financial jargon." She reached out and patted my knee. "You work so hard, my love. Let me handle this. You just have to trust me. Don't you trust me?" And there it was, the question designed to disarm me, to make my suspicion the problem. I looked into the eyes of the woman I had loved for over a decade, the mother of my child, and against every screaming instinct in my gut, I nodded. But as I walked away, The image of that 4317 was burned into my mind. Trust was a switch, and mine had just been flipped off. Trust is a fragile thing. Once cracked, it never holds weight the same way again. Amelia's slick explanation about an investment fund played on a loop in my head for days. I tried to force myself to believe it, to go back to the way things were, but I couldn't. Her words felt hollow, rehearsed. The image of that paltry 4317 haunted my every waking moment. It was a digital scream for help, a distress signal from my daughter's future. I knew in my gut that something was deeply wrong, and if I didn't find out what, I would be failing Lily in the most fundamental way. So I started digging. My investigation began not with a professional, but with a pile of old bank statements from our joint checking account that I'd previously ignored. For years, I'd let Amelia manage the daily flow of money, trusting her implicitly. Now I looked at those statements with new eyes, searching for anything out of place. It didn't take long to find a pattern. There were frequent, large cash withdrawals, always from ATMs located near the city's most expensive shopping districts. There were also consistent monthly payments made to credit card companies I didn't recognize, cards that weren't in my name. A new grim routine began. I started intercepting the mail, getting to the mailbox the moment it was delivered, my heart pounding each time I sorted through the envelopes. I felt like a spy in my own home, a feeling that churned my stomach with guilt. But the need for truth was a far stronger force. About a week later, it arrived. A crisp white envelope addressed to Amelia from a major credit card company, one I knew for a fact we did not share. My hands trembled as I carefully opened it, crossing a boundary I never thought I'd cross in my marriage. The contents of that statement made the blood drain from my face. It was a ledger of a life I didn't know my wife was living. Line after line of exorbitant charges: Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton. $400 lunches at restaurants I'd never heard of. Weekend spa retreats that she had told me were visiting a sick friend. The total at the bottom was staggering, a mountain of debt accrued on luxuries. It was sickening, but it wasn't yet the final damning proof. That came when I pulled up the transaction history for Lily's savings account on my laptop and placed the credit card statement beside it. My eyes scanned the two documents, matching dates. February the 10th, a $7,500 withdrawal from Lily's account. February 11th, a $7,500 payment to the credit card. March 22nd, a $5,000 withdrawal. March 23rd, a $4,090 charge at a high-end jewelry store. It went on like this for years. A systematic, cold-blooded looting. She was siphoning money directly from her own child's future to fund a fantasy life. The investment fund wasn't real. The only thing she had invested in was herself. The love I felt for her curdled into something cold and hard. The shock was gone, replaced by an icy, clarifying rage. I sat there in the silence of my study, surrounded by the paper trail of her betrayal, and I knew my marriage was over. The only question left was how to end it. I didn't confront her that night, or the next. For 3 days, I moved through our home like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, observing her with a chilling new clarity. I watched her scroll through luxury brand websites on her tablet, completely oblivious to the storm gathering within me. She mistook my silence for submission, assuming I had accepted her flimsy story about the investment fund. She had no idea I was no longer her husband. I was an evidence gatherer, a strategist planning his exit. I made copies of every statement. I took screenshots of the online transaction histories. I built my case with the meticulous precision of a prosecutor. On the 4th night, after Lily was asleep, I walked into the living room where Amelia was watching some reality TV show. I placed the 2 stacks of paper on the coffee table in front of her. Lily's savings account withdrawals on one side, her corresponding credit card statements on the other. I had highlighted the matching dates and amounts. I didn't raise my voice. I kept it low, steady, and devoid of all emotion. Amelia, I've been reviewing your investment portfolio. It's quite something. She glanced at the papers, her brow furrowing in confusion, then irritation. What is this? I told you not to worry about it. I'm not worried, I said, my voice as cold as ice. I'm informed. It seems Lily's college fund was heavily invested in Louis Vuitton, with smaller, diversified holdings in Gucci and Prada. Was that your strategy, to ensure our daughter would be the best-dressed unemployed person in her class? The colour drained from her face as she recognised the statements. The mask of the patient wife didn't just slip, it shattered. Her eyes, once soft and loving, narrowed into slits of pure fury. There was no apology, no remorse, only rage at being caught. You went through my things, she spat, her voice venomous. You had no right. I had every right, I replied, my calmness unnerving her more than any shouting match could. It was my daughter's future you were setting on fire to keep yourself warm. 6 years of my overtime, of my saving, of my sacrifice. For what? Handbags? Shoes? This is where a normal person would break down, would cry, would beg for forgiveness. Not Amelia. She stood up, her body trembling with self-righteous anger. I deserved it, she shrieked. Do you know how hard my life is? All my friends' husbands buy them these things. I had to sit there and pretend I was happy with our boring middle-class life. If you were a real man, if you earned enough money, I wouldn't have had to borrow from a dormant account. This is your fault. Hearing those words, something inside me finally broke. It wasn't the theft of the money that was the deepest wound. It was this absolute bottomless void where a conscience should have been. She felt she was the victim. She believed she was entitled to her child's security. I looked at the raging stranger in front of me and realized the woman I married had been a fiction all along. I calmly picked up my copies of the statements. Thank you for clarifying, I said quietly. Now I know exactly what I need to do. The day after our confrontation, a truce of ice settled over the house. We were two strangers coexisting in the same space, the silence punctuated only by the necessities of parenting Lily. Amelia treated me with a defiant hostility, as if I were the one who had committed a great transgression against her. She was waiting for me to break, to yell, to start the messy fight she could use as further proof of my unreasonableness. I did none of those things. I was a glacier, calm on the surface, moving with an unstoppable, grinding force underneath. I had already spoken to a lawyer. I knew my rights and, more importantly, I knew how to protect my daughter. As I expected, Amelia didn't wait long to call in her reinforcements. On the second day, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Eleanor. I took a deep breath and answered. I didn't even get to say hello. Her voice, sharp and accusatory, shot through the phone. Robert and I are disgusted with your behaviour, she began, dispensing with any pleasantries. Absolutely disgusted. Amelia called us in tears. How could you be so cruel to her, accusing her of stealing, threatening to leave her, after everything she does for you and Lily? You should be on your knees thanking God you have a wife as beautiful and dedicated as our daughter. I listened silently as she recited the script Amelia had clearly fed her. In Amelia's version of the story, she was a beleaguered wife being terrorized by a financially abusive husband over a few small misunderstandings with the household budget. There was no mention of Lily's account, no mention of designer bags or secret credit cards. It was a masterpiece of victimhood, and her parents had swallowed it whole. She is a good mother and a wonderful wife, Eleanor continued, her voice rising. She has dedicated her life to your home, and you treat her like a criminal over a little bit of money. Money you should be happy she has, to make herself presentable. Her appearance is a reflection on you, you know. I let her finish her tirade. Arguing with her would be like reasoning with a hurricane. Her loyalty wasn't to the truth. It was to the perfect image of her golden child. When she finally paused for breath, I knew the demand was coming. "You will come to our home tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, she commanded, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. "You will sit down with us and Amelia, you will apologize for the pain you have caused, and you will promise to end this disgusting campaign against your wife. Do you understand me?" This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. They thought they were summoning a disobedient subordinate for a dressing down. They had no idea they were setting the stage for their own daughter's downfall. A quiet, cold resolve settled over me. I wasn't walking into an ambush, I was walking into the theatre where the final act of my marriage would play out. And I was the director. "Yes, Eleanor," I said, my voice betraying nothing. "I understand. I'll be there." I spent the next day in a state of focused calm. I organized the documents into a neat folder, the bank statements, the credit card bills, the highlighted transactions. Each page was a nail for the coffin of my marriage. When 7 o'clock arrived, I drove to my in-laws' house, not with dread, but with a sense of grim purpose. As I walked up the manicured stone path to their front door, I knew I was leaving my old life behind me. I stepped inside, and the scene was exactly as they had arranged it. Robert stood like a sentinel by the fireplace. Eleanor was perched on the edge of the sofa, her back ramrod straight. And in the centre, nestled in an armchair like a queen holding court, was Amelia. She had a smug, confident look on her face. She believed her victory was assured. They had even summoned her brother, Leo, who stood awkwardly near the doorway, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. They likely wanted him there as another witness to my humiliation. As soon as I entered the living room, my mother-in-law began. "Well, we are waiting, Mark, for your apology." I walked past them and stood before the large mahogany coffee table. I didn't say a word. I simply opened my folder and began laying out the documents, one by one, in a neat grid on the polished surface. Amelia's smugness faltered. "What are you doing?" "An apology requires an understanding of the facts," I said, my voice even and clear. "I want to make sure we're all on the same page." I tapped the first statement. "This is from Lily's college savings account. Note the withdrawal on January 14th for $6,000. I then placed a credit card statement next to it. "And this is from a credit card Amelia opened without my knowledge. Note the payment on January 15th for $6,000. And here," I added, placing a third document, "is the charge from a luxury travel agency on January 16th for the solo wellness retreat she took." I continued this way, piece by piece, document by document, for nearly 10 minutes. I narrated a 6-year history of theft, a withdrawal followed by a payment, a depleted savings account funding a life of secret luxury. With each new piece of evidence, the atmosphere in the room changed. The aggressive certainty of my in-laws evaporated, replaced by a thick, horrified silence. Robert's arms uncrossed, and he sank into a chair. Eleanor's face went pale, her mouth slightly agape. Amelia tried to interrupt, to object, her voice rising in panic. "He's lying. He faked those." "They're official bank records, Amelia," I said flatly, not even looking at her. "I have certified copies of all of them." I finished by placing the final statement on the table, the one showing the current balance. 4317. That is what 6 years of my overtime and our daughter's dreams have been reduced to. "Now," I said, finally looking up and meeting Eleanor's stunned gaze, "what was it you wanted me to apologize for?" The silence that followed my question was a living thing. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with the ghosts of 1,000 lies. Amelia was the first to break. The fury she'd shown me in private was gone, replaced by a raw, animal panic. The tears were real this time, streaming down her face as she looked desperately at her parents. "Mommy, Daddy, say something, he's twisting everything." But her parents were frozen, their faces etched with a horror that was slowly curdling into shame. It wasn't concern for me or for their granddaughter that paralyzed them. It was the catastrophic implosion of their own perfect family narrative. It was the social disgrace. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, finally turned her gaze from the papers on the table to her daughter. Her voice was a dry whisper. "Amelia, is this true? The bags, the money from the child's account." "I was going to pay it back," Amelia wailed, her defense crumbling into a pathetic plea. "I swear, I just needed some time. Don't let him do this." It was then that Leo, the silent scapegoat, finally spoke. He hadn't moved from his spot by the door, but his voice cut through the room with weary authority. "Of course it's true," he said, not looking at anyone in particular. "Why are you surprised?" He finally turned to his parents, his expression not triumphant, but profoundly sad. "This is who she's always been. You just chose not to see it. Do you remember when Grandma's $100 bill went missing from her birthday card? Amelia was 16. You blamed the cleaning lady. Do you remember when my tuition money was lost in that bad stock tip Dad got? I remember seeing Amelia with a brand new car a week later." A fresh wave of shock hit Eleanor and Robert. Leo's words were a quiet confirmation that this wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a character trait they had willfully ignored and enabled for decades. Their daughter wasn't just a spendthrift. She was a predator within her own family. The shame on their faces was absolute. I had seen enough. My goal was accomplished. The truth was out, undeniable and ugly. I gathered my documents from the table, my movements deliberate and final. "I am filing for divorce tomorrow morning," I announced to the ruined tableau in front of me. "I will be seeking full and sole custody of Lily. Her future, financial and emotional, is no longer safe with her mother." I looked directly at Amelia, whose sobs had now subsided into hiccuping gasps of disbelief. "Every one of these documents will be submitted as evidence in family court. There will be no negotiation." I turned my back on them, on Amelia's crumpled form, on her parents' shell-shocked faces, on the entire toxic dynamic that had festered in that house for years. As I walked out the front door and into the cool night air, I didn't feel angry or sad. I felt free. Behind me, I left a family not in grief, but in the throes of its own self-inflicted implosion. The princess was dethroned, and the castle walls were coming down. The legal proceedings were swift and brutal. Just as my lawyer predicted, Amelia's side had no interest in a prolonged court battle. The mountain of evidence I possessed was so overwhelming that a public hearing would have been nothing short of a character execution. Her lawyer, after seeing my documentation, likely advised her that her best and only option was to capitulate. Her attempts to paint me as controlling or abusive were laughable in the face of years of bank statements, proving she had unilateral control over a secret, lavish budget funded by theft. She agreed to all my terms. I was granted full physical and legal custody of Lily. The court established a new, ironclad trust fund for her education with a third-party trustee, ensuring that not a single cent could be touched by her mother. To compensate for the assets she had dissipated from our child's savings, I was awarded the entirety of our marital home and the majority of our shared investments. Amelia walked away with her car, her personal effects, and the staggering credit card debt she had accrued entirely in her own name. She was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. Her parents, Robert and Eleanor, did not ride in on a white horse to save her. As Leo later told me in a brief, quiet phone call, their shame had completely eclipsed their affection. They were furious with her, not for the immorality of her actions, but for the public humiliation. They refused to pay off her debts. For the first time in her life, the safety net was gone. The golden child had been cast out. I heard through the grapevine that she was forced to sell her collection of designer bags and shoes on second-hand websites, getting back only a tiny fraction of what she had stolen to pay for them. She ended up taking a job as a hostess at a chain restaurant, the fall from grace both public and profound. What Amelia and her parents never knew was the final, bitter irony of the situation. I had never been the simple middle-class man just getting by, the man she accused of not earning enough. That was a life I chose to live. Years ago, I had made a series of very quiet, very successful investments in tech startups. I was, by any measure, a wealthy man. I kept it quiet because I wanted to build a life with someone who valued me, not my bank account. I wanted a partner, not a parasite. My modest lifestyle was a test, and Amelia had failed it in the most spectacular way imaginable. She threw away a life of genuine love and security, a life where she could have eventually had all the luxury she craved, honestly, all for the cheap, immediate thrill of a secret she thought she'd never have to answer for. After the divorce was finalized, I used my resources to start my own consulting firm. Lily and I moved to a new house in a better school district. Her new trust fund was seeded with an amount that made the money Amelia stole look like pocket change. Our future was secure. Years passed. Life, which had once been a landscape of betrayal and anxiety, settled into a peaceful, sunlit rhythm. My consulting firm flourished beyond my wildest expectations, but the true measure of my wealth was Lily. She grew into a smart, funny, and remarkably well-adjusted teenager. The scars of her mother's betrayal were there, but they had faded, replaced by the security of a stable home and a father who adored her. We talked about what happened, honestly and age-appropriately. She understood that her mother had made choices that were deeply wrong, and she learned a powerful lesson about integrity and consequences. Our bond was the foundation of my new life, stronger than any portfolio. One Sunday afternoon, the past came calling. An unfamiliar luxury car pulled up to our driveway. Out stepped Eleanor and Robert. They were older, a bit more stooped, but dressed in the same expensive clothes. They approached me as I was gardening, their faces arranged in practiced, sorrowful lines. "Mark," Eleanor began, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "We were just in the neighborhood. We think about you and Lily all the time." Robert nodded eagerly. "We were so wrong, son. We see that now. We see what a success you've become, what a wonderful father you are. We just want to be part of our granddaughter's life again. Family is what's most important after all." I put down my trowel and wiped my hands on my jeans, looking at these two people who had once held so much power over my happiness. I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, just a calm, clear finality. "Family is important," I agreed, my voice even. "A family protects its own, especially the children. When you had a choice between defending your granddaughter's future and defending a thief, you made your decision. You showed us exactly what your family is worth." I gestured toward their car. "We have everything we need here. You are not welcome." Their smiles vanished. For a moment, I saw a flash of the old indignation in Eleanor's eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by the cold reality of their powerlessness. They had no leverage here. They had burned that bridge long ago. Without another word, they turned and walked back to their car. I watched them drive away, and I never saw or heard from them again. As for Amelia, I hear bits and pieces about her life from Leo, with whom I still have a cordial relationship. She drifted from one low-wage job to another, never able to hold on to anything for long. She is a lonely woman, trapped in a life she never wanted, haunted by the ghost of a life she could have had but was unwilling to earn. She has tried to contact Lily a few times over the years, but Lily, now old enough to make her own choices, has politely and firmly declined. The most important thing I ever saved for my daughter wasn't money. It was her peace. It was her freedom from a legacy of lies. And that is an investment that pays dividends forever.